Oh, I've got to. Hello again. As I mentioned before the break, we're delighted to have a keynote speech from Gillian Keegan, Parliamentary Undersecretary for Apprenticeships and Skills at the Department for Education. Gillian has recorded her message. Here she is.
About our plans to revolutionise the skills system in our country as we recover from the pandemic and the role that the public sector has in making this happen. Ensuring people have the right skills will be more important than ever as we build back from the pandemic and as we adjust to changes resulting from our exit from the European Union, and also as we gear up for adapting to the green economy agenda and tackle social and technological changes. There are so many changes happening in our society, in our labour market at the moment, and I am privileged to be the Minister overseeing all that we are doing to meet those challenges and improve the skills in our nation. The Prime Minister has already made clear that apprenticeships and skills are a key pillar of our recovery strategy. One of the first challenges we are confronting is the fact that for too long, university has been seen as the only route to success. As a department, we are challenging outdated and untrue assertions that a good education is only a university education. Now, as a former apprentice myself, I know from experience that the academic route isn't the only route and isn't the only route to the top. I left school in Liverpool in the 1980s, a period also characterised by high youth unemployment. And my apprenticeship in a car factory in a place called Kirby set me up for a successful 30-year career in the international, multinational business sector. So I know how valuable apprenticeships can be, and I would challenge anyone to tell me that an apprentice cannot achieve what a graduate can. Our rebalancing of higher and further education will make going to college or taking an apprenticeship as compelling as studying for a traditional full-time 3-year degree. And despite the terrible toll this pandemic has taken, the development of technical skills is more important now than ever, because sadly, there are many people who will have lost their jobs over the last year. We need to make sure that we are there for these people and we give them real opportunities to gain skills, so when the right work opportunity appears, they have the skills to grasp it with both hands. Getting people back into work has been a top priority for this government, and we've been working really hard to do all that we can to support people during the pandemic. The Prime Minister's Lifetime Skills Guarantee includes a range of programmes to help people re-enter the workplace, such developing lifelong loans, skills boot camps, and free courses for jobs at level 3 in key areas. Now, the public sector is a major employer in this country. Latest ONS figures show that there were an estimated 5.6 million employees in the public sector in December 2020. Now, as such, it has a huge role to play in boosting employment opportunities, particularly in providing apprenticeships. Our reforms have transformed apprenticeships into a prestigious technical education option that launches people's careers, upskills and retrains workers, and helps employers to develop the skills they will need to thrive and compete in the future. Now, apprenticeships can cover anything from administration, data science, data analytics, policy making, firefighting, nursing, teaching, policing, and all levels of management and health. And they're available from entry level to degree level and actually through to master's levels as well. Now, as a former apprentice myself, I know firsthand what a fantastic opportunity they are. And it is certainly true that since becoming an MP and working with many, many businesses, there are many businesses across our country who are really embracing apprenticeships and know that actually in a fast-moving, highly technological world, putting together the learned experience and the skills training and on the job, as well as the transfer of knowledge with a college or between another training provider, is actually a brilliant way to gain the skills that you need for modern day careers. Apprentices account for around 1 in 10 of new appointments in the public sector. That's 12.9% in 2019-20. And apprentices are becoming an increasingly popular way to get into the public sector workforce and to grow and develop your skills. The percentage of employees who are apprentices rose from 2.5% to 3.1% in the latest 2019-20 period, and that's including those who began in previous years. And we've set ourselves a target of 2.3%, requiring all public sector bodies with 250 or more staff in England to aim to employ at least 2.3% of their headcount in England as new apprentices. And we are making progress from 1.4% in 2017 to 1.7% now. And we've seen year-on-year increases in the number of apprentices hired within the public sector, and when some public sector bodies have actually exceeded the target. However, there is more work to do. The public sector must lead from the front in developing the skills that the workforce needs as the country recovers. Public sector apprenticeships open the door to tens of thousands of individuals every year to a wide variety of different pathways for them to follow. And I urge public sector organisations to be ambitious in your plans to take advantage of apprenticeships to help meet your skills needs in the coming years. I'm delighted to say that the DfE has been leading the way and has exceeded the public sector target for apprenticeship starts for each of the last 3 years, and will exceed the target again in 2020, 2021. It'd be pretty embarrassing for me to sit here if that wasn't the case, to be honest. We currently offer over 30 apprenticeship standards from level 2 to level 7. Apprentices in the DfE currently represent 4.6% of the workforce, and we have recently joined the 5% club of employers who aspire to apprentices and trainees making up 5% of their workforce. We are now also ensuring that the majority of new appointments at executive assistant and executive officer level across government recruitment are advertised as apprenticeships. I'm keen to work with organisations from across the public sector to ensure that you can grow and continue to grow the number of high quality apprenticeships that you offer, both to new and existing staff across a full range of occupational roles and levels, and make sure that the public sector continues to show leadership and to lead from the front. But it's not just apprenticeships. I want to encourage the public sector bodies to think creatively about how we can build our skills pipelines and offer opportunities to young people to boost their skills. T-levels are a brand new qualification which are revolutionising technical education in everything from accounting to healthcare science, human resources and legal. What sets these courses apart is the chance to undertake an industry placement as part of your training, giving essential first-hand experience of the world of work to young people today. The willingness of employers to offer placements are paramount to the success of T-levels. So we need your help to secure industry placements by identifying opportunities within your own organisations. It's critical that the public sector plays a central role in offering placements and developing the professional skills of young people who are about to enter the workforce. Many of us will have been given this opportunity as we entered the workforce, and it's time to give back and give that opportunity to the next generation. It's clear that the skills landscape and the way that we work is changing, and it's clear that we need to move with the shifting landscape, or we will risk the country getting left behind on the international stage. I'm often struck as I speak to my counterparts in all parts of the world, how many of us are battling with the same challenges, increasing technical education, increasing the skill sets and moving to the 21st century jobs, and how we do that in the midst of a pandemic. But the public sector can do more to support both the skills programs we are offering, and in doing so, supporting the people of all ages who want to take those opportunities and providing work placements, apprenticeships, traineeships, and get involved in revolutionising our skills system. Taking such action will not just benefit your organisation, but it will benefit those individuals seeking work and seeking opportunities. It will also benefit the country as we seek to build back better, rebuild our economy, close our productivity gap, and make sure that we have a country with a skill set fit for the future. Thank you.
very much to Gillian, and fascinating to hear there that she started out as an apprentice in a car factory 30 years ago. So it's time now to move on to our fifth and final panel discussion of the day. And whilst the pandemic has been challenging and tough for many people and businesses, one thing it has done is highlight and accelerate the digitally enabled public sector. The public sector began adopting digital processes and operating models years ago, heralding the dawn of a new digital era. But I don't think anyone anticipated the speed now required. This new era has been made possible by rapid and exciting changes in technology. At the same time, unprecedented cost pressures and rising public expectation have converged to create pressure for change. Between 2020 and 2024, the public sector estimates it will spend £290 million on training through centralised learning and development contracts. We'll be discussing how we address one of the public sector's biggest challenges, the skills gap, including the development and retention of future leaders. So joining me for these discussions are Naomi Clayton, Deputy Director for Research and Development at the Learning and Work Institute, Antony Walker, Deputy CEO of Tech UK, James Lane, Digital Sector Manager at NCFE, Isa Mutlib, Chief Executive Officer, BAME Apprenticeship Alliance, and Dr. Louise Karwowski, Director of Education at Cognassist. Our guests, as you can see from that list, are perfectly positioned to offer expert insight into this very real challenge for the sector. And their involvement also gives you a brilliant opportunity to ask questions. So please use our live Q&A function, and the team from PSE will share as many of your questions as they can with me. So let's get started. Welcome to you all. I'd like to kick off, if that's okay, with Naomi. And Naomi, really starting from the basics, what do we mean by digital skills and how is demand for digital skills changing?
Yeah, so we tend to talk about basic digital skills and advanced digital skills. And we know that essentially, basic digital skills are becoming an essential skill for the world of work. And by basic digital skills, we mean the ability to use common software. So, the ability to use Microsoft Word and Excel, and the ability to communicate digitally as well, and learn new digital skills. We're also seeing that demand for advanced digital skills is increasing. So by that, we mean things like coding, which is often talked about, and computer-aided design. And we've seen that essentially demand for basic digital skills is now kind of near universal. So 9 out of 10 employers say that they need a workforce that has basic digital skills, and demand for advanced digital skills is increasing. So obviously it's been one of the impacts of the pandemic, which has essentially sped up the use of digital technology. But we also know that 1 in 4, actually I think it's 3 in 5 employers expect to increase their requirements for advanced digital skills in the next 5 years.
James, I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that digital is no longer a desirable skill in life or in jobs? I mean, it's essential, it's a functional skill now, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah. And that's where we've seen things like the essential digital skills qualification come in, because those skills really are essential to everyday life. Completely agree with what Naomi was saying. It spans that skills range spans, yes, from all of the very techie, geeky, very exciting stuff that I work on, and it goes right through to that other end, which is equally exciting, that we work on, that is that everyday skills. When we're talking about an individual, it's about someone being able to not just access the internet, but understand that they can get better deals on utility, they can access education, they can access their banking. As we see more high street banks closing those branches, we're at risk of excluding and disadvantaging people in society for a whole variety of reasons, but partly because of that skills gap that we're seeing. So the EDSQ is a really good launch platform to start addressing that.
Isa, you were nodding away there. I'm of a certain age where, I'm embarrassed to tell you that I get a bit frightened of digital learning, and I realize that I need to improve my skill set. And if I feel slightly nervous about it, as somebody who does love the digital world, I'm just wondering, Isa, who do you come across that in your world that are perhaps a bit frightened of it? Do you come across people who aren't really ready to embrace it and are nervous about, what the future of work means if you're not digitally able?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. A lot of our work is with young people, but as we broaden our horizon to the people work with, we do notice that a lot of people who have been in the workforce for about 30 to 40 years and are looking for new skills to develop, they are trying to embrace digital technology to really broaden the skills that they have. Typically in past, they may have been isolated to one or two skills based on the work that they've done, and one thing the pandemic has done is allowed them to see what other alternative routes are, but primarily because they've been either laid off or been put on furlough. Furlough was an opportunity for a lot of people to pick up new skills and being fashioned by new technologies, ed tech, also stuff like that, to be able to embrace new ways of working.
Louise, we have been, as we said, throughout the day, living in unprecedented times. What valuable lessons do you think we've learned from the pandemic as far as skills and education go?
Yeah, so we're seeing at Cognassist, we're seeing a big increase in adult learning as a result of the pandemic. So a lot of learners of a certain age, as we keep saying, are finding themselves in situations where they're returning to education after a long time. And as you say, the world's different now. We expect people to have these skills that didn't exist 20 years ago. So we're dealing with a lot of learners who are timid and coming to us with trepidation. They're worried about this new world, that they've lost their jobs and they have to retrain. So we're seeing a lot of change in that adult learner sector. We've learned as well the importance of flexibilities and possibilities as well. This period, although it's been dreadful, has taught us that, we can react really quickly and positively to change, massive change. So I'd be curious to see what currently are we viewing as impossible that will become standard process in the future.
Antony, it's obvious, isn't it, that the pandemic has changed all of our techniques, but that by very virtue of the fact we're having this conference virtually, I normally host these, and, we'll be in Manchester or Birmingham or wherever around the country. The pandemic's definitely changed our tech needs. It's accelerated them, which in some ways I'm imagining must be music to your ears. But you've just published a new report, and I'm just wondering if you could just give us the highlights, the sort of top lines from your findings of that new report.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Yeah, so we published our report yesterday, and it's called Fast Forward for Digital Jobs. And what we'd like to do is kind of turn this debate on its head a little bit, because for a long time, we've talked about skills in quite a negative way. We've talked about a skills gap. We've talked about hesitancy. We've talked about the threat of automation. But actually, what we've seen through the course of the pandemic is that the economy as a whole, even in the pandemic, has been creating a huge amount of demand for digital skills and for digital roles. And so what we think we should be talking about is the digital jobs opportunity that we have. And we're really excited about this because of two things. First of all, we see digital driving job creation across all sectors of the economy and all parts of the economy, all regions of the economy. But it's coming at a time where also within the technology sector, particularly with the experience of apprenticeships, there's been this realization that we don't have to rely on these traditional routes and these traditional pathways into the sector of university, degree, an MA or an MSc, whatever it is. And then actually what we've learned from apprenticeships is that sometimes kind of short modular learning combined with real industry-led experience can bring people in from very diverse backgrounds and get them productive in the digital workplace really, really quickly. So we are huge fans and huge advocates for a big shift to kind of bite-sized modular learning And we believe that if we do that, we can literally drive millions of people from traditional non-digital jobs into digital roles in a way that can open up really exciting opportunities for a lot of people who hadn't, who maybe hadn't prospered through traditional education provision and so on. So actually, we think this is a moment of real opportunity. It's really exciting. I think it's very much in tune with what government is saying about the focus on adult learning. But it's not going to happen unless we make it happen. And that's really the focus of our report.
I like what you said there. You can't eat an elephant whole, as a friend of mine says. And I think you've not got to be afraid in bite-sized chunks. I also like the way you use the expression digital jobs opportunity. I mean, Naomi, we do often talk, don't we, about the digital skills gap. And what does that gap look like in the UK? And how can we put a more positive spin on it in the way that Antony has done just now?
Yeah, I agree with Antony's point that we need to look at this in a positive way and talk about the opportunities. I think we also need to make sure that people are equipped to access those opportunities. And of course, that's where the digital skills gap comes in. So, we know from past research that 13 million adults in the UK have low digital skills. We also know from our work where we've surveyed employers that 1 in 4 employers say that their workforce lacks basic digital skills, and 1 in 3 state that their workforce lacks the advanced digital skills that they need. So there are questions obviously about the impacts that will have on business performance, and of course the economic recovery out of the current crisis. So I think we absolutely need to be very aware of those gaps, but be looking at ways in which we can make sure that people, both young people coming out of education and adults who are already in the workforce, are able to access skills and training opportunities.
And James, how is critical in that is infrastructure support?
Absolutely essential. I mean, the reality is, you mentioned that the digital sector or the digital world is moving so fast, and we're really not geared up probably to keep pace with it as it currently is. From an infrastructure perspective, if we take something like ubiquitous like internet connectivity, we are on the precipice of a huge leap, a huge evolution, a very exciting one, but we need to shift our infrastructure to support that. We've seen amazing and very exciting changes within things like education, where we've adapted to virtualizing classrooms. So what does that next evolution look like? Is there a virtual reality solution that we should be looking at? Can we project, I suppose Blue Sky thinking, can we project holograms of teachers into young people's dining rooms? Is that possible? Well, right now, no, because we don't have the internet infrastructure. Weirdly, we're sort of pretty good on the other side of technology. We can kind of do really cool stuff like that, but we have a bandwidth capacity issue. So we look to things like the ultra fast rollout. We look to maintaining what I think is starting to become a relatively basic speed of like gigabit into people's homes, but we're looking to trials, very exciting trials, of things like 30 to 35 terabit connections to people's houses. And this opens up a whole world of amazing things that realistically will be decided by people who wear white lab coats, because it's at the moment a little bit science fiction, but it's there. We're right on the cusp of it. It's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
It sounds science fiction, but it's not. I don't think it is far away, is it? We've seen so much change over the last sort of decade. Issa, you work in the apprenticeship space, and apprenticeships are being pushed by government as a possible way of addressing the skills gap. And I think just recently the government doubled the incentives for employers to take on apprentices. In fact, our conference today is being run by 3 young apprentices. Are they part of the solution, Issa?
Clearly, if you've got 3 running this conference, they're part of some solution.
Me, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, of solutions. Obviously, we've got university, and it's essentially an alternative to university, but more now, and our in a way, sitting on par with university, with what university can offer and what apprenticeships can offer. Now, what you do also, as Minister said just before this, is that you can actually do an apprenticeship in nearly every sector, and to go as far that a medical qualification to an apprenticeship. But so in answering the question, it brings added value to the apprentice, it brings added value to the economy, it brings added value to the employers as well. And importantly, they've been designed by employers who know the future of work, hopefully, and with that in mind. And they've created an apprenticeship standard where specific skills are needed to achieve progression. Now, what we've said also is that it needs constant review to ensure that we are meeting the future of work, because the future of work up until 2019 December is now different to what the future of work looks like in going forward beyond there. One last thing, and something which is obviously passionate to the work that I'm about diversity and social mobility. Obviously, that's my day job and my night job as well, is social mobility. It's really good when it comes to apprenticeships and social mobility. What we abide by is what we've called the 5 pillars of social mobility. So the 5 pillars are opportunity, progression, skills, job security, and money. Money is usually the one that not many people talk about, but I'll repeat that again for anybody who wants to hear again. It's opportunity, progression, skills, job security, and money. Traditionally, universities were seen as ticking all them boxes that they provide. Unfortunately, we're in a situation now where they don't, whereas apprenticeships can and do achieve all parts of social mobility in respect of that.
Oh, I know you've just done a poll on LinkedIn actually about social mobility and hybrid working, so we should all try and have a look at that and talk about.
It's quite interesting. We've got it's 50-50 at the moment. I mean, there's not many votes on it at the moment, but it's gone 50-50. Some people say it will hinder it, some people say it will support it. So there's still a lot of discussion around this.
Issa, if people in the audience want to find it, how do they find that? Not now, while we're having a panel debate, but once we're finished.
On my LinkedIn page.
On your LinkedIn page. Cool, good
advice.
Louise, who is responsible for ensuring then that apprentices are enjoying high quality and tailored programs that really are useful and what we need?
Thanks, Hanya. That's a great question. And it comes up a lot. It's a collective effort. We're all responsible that happens. Of course, input from government agencies such as the SFA and IFATE, and of course Ofsted, are key to ensuring what best practice looks like and reviewing that best practice as things change. Employer engagement is absolutely key to all of this. We've seen with our research that invested employers have a huge impact as opposed to employers who are just in it for the money. For me, it's what you said before in the intro to the question, it's accessibility and tailored approaches. So we've assessed cognitively over 100,000 apprentices now, and we found that 1 in 3 apprentices is showing signs of neurodiversity, i.e. they have a learning need of some sort. So it's the training provider's responsibility as well to make sure that programs are tailored to individuals. This one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work in education. We have to think about the fact that we all think and learn differently. So it's a collective approach. And I'd say, just to finish, that the apprentice is key in all of this. The learner is key in all of this. So the conversation with the learner is key. Initial assessment and cognitive assessment at the beginning of the program is key, and constant reflection on a case-by-case basis.
Antony, James used the adjective exciting. I mean, how big a tech opportunity are we facing now? How exciting is it? And how do we promote it and make sure that, it's available to more people and that it's not, just those who are in the privileged position to do it, that we make sure it's there for all?
Well, ultimately, every job is going to require some digital skills. But I mean, we're talking about millions of jobs here over the next few years. So the opportunity is huge, and as I said, it's across every sector of the economy. But what we've got to do is make sure that we're opening up this opportunity to people from all walks of life, from all kinds of backgrounds, and we've got to make sure that people believe that these are jobs that that are there for them, and they're not there for just some sort of elite somewhere. And so as a sector, we've got to do a much better job about showcasing these opportunities, because learners want line of sight to a job. I mean, that's what they really want. So we need to tell them that these jobs are here and that they're real. And then we need to set out the options that are available to them for these kind of bite-sized routes to get into these roles. That can be apprenticeships, or it can be boot camps. Ideally, these things should fit together and provide a kind of progression. But the crucial thing is we've got to focus on employability. We've got a duty really to the learner to make sure, if they take the time and invest the money to it in this retraining, that we're saying it's going to get you to a good job, because we'll have focused on making sure that you are employable. And that's where this engagement between employers and learning providers is so important. And that's why we also think that accreditation has got an important role to play here, industry-led accreditation, so that learners and future employers be confident that people have had, that the courses that are being provided are up to date and meeting the needs of business. But honestly, it really is exciting. I think we can democratize really exciting jobs and high value jobs in a way that we've never been able to do before. And I think I just think that's really exciting.
Naomi, what should the government do to address the digital skills gap and to ensure that it is being addressed and it's not just, a soundbite that we talk about?
I think there are a number of things, and I think generally we kind of need a step change in ambition around digital skills too. To talk to Antony's point about programs that enable access to job opportunities, I think we need to look at where these programs have been most successful, and government needs to think about the role of local partners in delivering these kind of support programs, how we can make sure that training opportunities are joined up with employers and their needs, and that we're really tailoring support to the needs of employers and to local economic context too. But beyond that, I think we need to also look at the skills pipeline and the opportunities that young people in school have to develop their digital skills. One of the findings from our recent report was there's been a 40% decline in students taking ICT at GCSE level since 2015, and fewer than 1 in 5 young people think that they have the advanced digital skills that employers need. So I think, there are specific programs that can support adults into these digital, employment opportunities. But we also need to be thinking about actually the more general need for digital skills, and make sure that that support is there for young people in school, but also that we find ways to engage adults who don't have, particularly those that don't have basic digital skills, to actually engage with the types of support that's available.
And James, investment presumably is needed to address the accessibility, if you like, of learning and of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've talked a lot around the skills. I love what Antony was saying about the skills opportunity as well as the skills gap. And we need to break open this problem so we can identify exactly what we can do to affect change. We've got a huge scope because we keep talking about digital, but it's massive, and we need to probably carve it up so that it becomes bite-sized chunks and we can start attacking the problem. But there's a huge opportunity here. I absolutely agree with that. But we need to identify where we need to make that time investment, that financial investment, the skills investment, and every other type of investment to make sure that we're taking everyone along with us, because we don't want to just. It's not about throwing digital at the problem, right? It's not a fix-all. There are some things that should be digitalized, there's some things that aren't, and we need to work with society, with employers, with industry experts, and everyone should have a voice into this. And that's what, I think we've seen the change in qualifications, that certainly how we've been developing over the last couple of years. We are working much closer with employers, and that will come through, because we're asking questions like, what would make a really exciting candidate, a really amazing candidate? What do those skills look like? And so it's a much more collaborative, it's a much richer process, and I think we're going to start seeing that coming through really soon.
James, I like your phrase there that, we've got to make sure we take everybody along with us. And Issa, there's been a lot of talk in recent months about diverse talent and underrepresentation from certain communities and skill gaps. Could underrepresentation hinder the chances of closing some of those gaps, do you think?
Yes. I mean, we know the socioeconomic benefits of having a diverse workforce. It's been widely reported. We know that it's a full representation. Well, we know that £24 billion is lost when Black and Asian and minority ethnic talent isn't represented across the talent pipeline. Question is why? And if you go to one place to recruit, you lose access to a talent pool where high quality knowledge and skills and behaviours are not given access to the opportunities which would and not could allow an organisation to thrive. And this also applies to moving up the talent pipeline, because it's also about not just bringing them into the organisation, but allowing them to move along the organisation up to different ranks. And I think, but this is quite an important time now, where the pandemic has hit, particularly when it comes to what we call the bottom line jobs. They are vastly represented by minority communities, and they have been sharply impacted by the pandemic in terms of lost jobs, etc. It's not just lost jobs for them; it's also lost skills for the employers and the communities. And kind of that's kind of where I would say, well, if you're not represented by then yes, it would hinder closing the skills gap.
Cycle moves very quickly, doesn't it? And diversity and inclusion are often spotlighted for a time in the public eye for a moment, and then people move on. What can we do to ensure that we really do instill real change and make sure that changes we bring in now are embedded, for the long term?
Yeah, I mean, if we're kind of talking about what businesses can do to sort of address the diversity and skills gap needs for business and generally, I think the easiest part really is to talk about recruitment and attraction. I think there's enough about it out there, but where I would say, and which was mentioned earlier, in fact, we run something called the Apprenticeship Diversity and Social Mobility Forum, and one day during the pandemic we focused purely on investment. We talk about financial investment into tackling inequalities. You may have seen big announcements by big companies who are spending billions and billions of dollars on it, or pounds on it, but it's about putting that to a tangible outcome. It's not just about putting the ring fencing that money there. And what we would say is using that investment to really the hardest part is building the culture where diverse talent can thrive, but also using sponsorship for diverse talent to learn new skills. And it's got to be in line with business needs, not just ticking a box, because I could learn about building a cupboard in a digital technology company, but there's no benefit. It's got to meet your business objectives and be open and honest about it. Identifying the talent through the usual metrics you use in various parts of the progression ladder, and giving the opportunity to those who may not necessarily have had access to it. Classic example is if you've got somebody in admin, but you think that they could do X, Y, Z. Remember, just because they're doing admin, that doesn't necessarily mean they can't do any other job. And lastly, the good thing about this, the good thing about the last 12 months is that we now know what we have access to in terms of technology, and technology has made it easier, especially during this pandemic, to learn and implement new skills in many different ways, and learn new skills that you're never usually exposed to. So kind of rethinking the process really there.
thoughts on that as well, you know, making sure that, you know, we make those changes and we bring them in for the long term, Louise?
Yeah, so just to add to Issa's point, is access. So, you know, a lot of the time we're failing at the first point. So we did a review of the top 50 apprenticeship providers recently, just to see how accessible their application process, but also their website was. 50% failed the basic review. So 50% didn't have a basic accessibility statement, which is now required by law. Very few had accessibility tools such as screen readers or closed captions. This is a basic requirement. So if we're talking about attracting talent, we're missing out on a vast number of apprentices or learners who might be exploring things through a website. So, you know, there needs to be a standard, a basic standard reached, and best practice needs to be talked about. Another thing, process needs to be standardized. So, you know, in fact, the Learning and Work Institute produced a report a couple of years ago now. Emily Jones and Elizabeth Davies, makes for really interesting reading. The problems that they flag in their report are still evident. So there are processes and funding available to support neurodiverse learners and disabled learners. But there's such a big lack of clarity around that process of evidencing. It's not being accessed. So support needs to be understood, people need to be trained and be familiar with how to support disabled learners.
We ensure that the dots are joined so that we can retrain and reskill at the scale that the economy needs and make sure that we meet the demands of the labour market.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the big challenge here, right, is that the training landscape is incredibly fragmented. You know, once you leave, you kind of go through school and there's a structure, and then you leave school and then suddenly it fragments into 1,000 pieces. And so I think the first thing we've got to work out is how do we help people navigate that? How do we help them understand where they are today, understand what the jobs of the future are, and how they can get from where they are to where they need to be, you know, what the options are in terms of the courses and so on. And then who the employers are at the end of the day, who they could potentially go to. We need to make that really clear so people have got line of sight. That's where my future income is, and that's how I can do it. And I think we'll never get rid of the fragmentation, right? It's always going to be fragmented. But what we can do, I think, is bring all of the relevant information together in at least into one place to really help people navigate that journey. So we've kind of called for the idea of a kind of platform that could bring all this stuff together. So you could go online, you could do a quick evaluation of your skills and your training. You could talk about the kind of, you know, you've got the kind of the careers bit, and then you could start to understand what some of the jobs are, start to understand what the training options, find out all of the funding options, how are you going to afford it? You know, can you use your lifelong loan entitlement and all that kind of thing? If we can put all that in one place, I think we could do a real service for people. At the same time, we would like to see a digital skills tax credit for small businesses so that we encourage them to invest more in the people that they've already got. And we'd also like to see some tweaks to the apprenticeship levy so that we can fund a different range of courses. Big companies can share some of those levy funds within their network. And I think if we come together, we can make this happen, you know, but we definitely have to collaborate and start working together. And because this is the moment, this really is the moment, I think.
I think that's a really good final thought from you, Antony. We have 2 minutes left, so I'd like to allocate 30 seconds to the rest of our guests. Starting with James, same question. There's been a lot of talk about building back better. If there's one thing that you would include in the post-COVID recovery in the skills arena, what would it be?
Taking yourself off mute on video conferencing, I think is probably the number one.
Oh, no, I haven't got myself on mute.
No. I think figuring out where to apply digital solutions against non-digital solutions. So when meeting, should it be an in-person meeting? Should it be a digital meeting? There's lots of really good reasons that we can't get into in 30 seconds, but we need to look at the Green Initiative. We need to look at digital skills. We need to look at the answer to the question, what should I be looking at here? That's I think a good place to start.
Naomi, what's your takeaway?
I think there are lots of things, but probably top priority would be funding, because we know that funding for adult education has fallen dramatically over recent years. We've got the skills lifetime guarantee. I think there are questions around how that could be extended to lower level courses and be available, made available to more adults, so they have opportunities to develop their skills, including their digital skills, and how we might support with the kind of wider costs of training. So we know that, you know, costs for transport and childcare can be quite a significant barrier to training. So I think my top priority would be funding.
And yours, Isa?
I would say to go back to your culture of the organisation, to ensure that culture allows people to thrive, learn new skills, and welcome people from all parts of communities and backgrounds, to allow them to thrive within an organisation, and make sure that it's not just a bottom-up approach, but it's a top-down approach as well.
Louise, no pressure, but final word, final panel goes to you.
Similarly, remember that we all think and learn differently. You know, neurodiversity isn't a buzzword. It needs to be understood and supported correctly. Everybody deserves an opportunity to achieve.
Well, it's brilliant panel discussion, a final fifth one of the day. So thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to Naomi, Antony, Louise, Isa and James. That was a really brilliant debate, and I'm certain will have been amazing value to you, our audience. And with that, today's proceeding draws to a close on what has been an inspirational and I hope valuable PSE365 event. I'd like to say a massive thank you to all of our panelists and keynote speakers, and to the team behind the scenes who have endeavoured to get this virtual show running smoothly. And a huge thank you to you, our delegates, for taking part. All of the content from today will be available to view on demand over the next 24 to 48 hours. And the team at Public Sector Executive haven't just put this event on to be a one and done day of learning. This really is the start of a journey, an ongoing conversation. The platform remains accessible to everyone here and everyone who joins over the coming weeks and months to utilise, learn from and connect within. It really is a community which we want to continue to grow and to expand. We'll be in touch with the winners of today's gamification. The 3 highest point holders from today's event have the chance to either plant a number of trees, 150 and 25 respectively, or have an equivalent donation to a charity of their choice. The PSE team also ensure that CPD certificates for attendance make it out to everybody, so that you get the deserved reward for tuning in and listening to what has been an amazing day of debate and insight. I've certainly found it really, really interesting. We hope to see many of you, along with some new faces too, perhaps some of your colleagues, at our next PSE365 virtual event, Public Sector Decarbonisation, which takes place on September the 9th. So do enjoy the rest of your day, take care, and thank you for having me as your host.